everyone. How many of you here first time in Vegas?
Okay.
Wow. And how many of you here first time in reInvent? Amazing. Just one advice, always keep in walking shoes. Don't wear the heels or anything because there's a lot of things to walk here. Wish you all the best if you're here for the first time, and I'm sure you will learn a lot of things end of the week. Thank you.
Yeah, let's
for
get
coming.
started. Good morning. That sounds right. Welcome to MAM334. And first of all, thank you. Thank you for attending our session on how to scale modernization with the help of agentic AI capabilities. I plan to start this session with 3 questions and a little bit of exercise together. Are you all ready? Okay, let's do it. Raise your hand if you're working or worked on one or more modernization projects. Okay, that's lots of hands, and that also tells me that you are in the right session. Now raise your hand if you have mandate to increase AI adoption, to reduce total cost of ownership, increase return of investment for your line of business. Good, good. Thanks for sharing that information with us. Now raise your both hands if you have a goal to do more with less. That means
Cost saving.
reducing operating cost or reduce total cost of ownership. Now keep the hand raised, keep the hand raised. Let's do a little bit of stretching from here. From left to right, from right to left. Let the blood flow. Take a deep breath. Now we think we are ready for the session. My name is Pradeep Bagchi. I'm an enterprise solution architect with AWS. Today I have with me Lalit Kumar. Today I have with me Lalit Kumar. He's an AI solutions architect with Thomson Reuters. And Yogi Barot, she's a tech lead Microsoft workload with AWS. 3 of us, we are going to share how you can supercharge your modernization project with the help of agentic AI capabilities. Now let's look into our agenda today. First, I'll start with the challenges. I mean, transformation challenges. What we are hearing from our customers. What's the voice of the field? I'll also share what are the motivations behind these modernization projects. Then Lalit is going to share his journey on how he is scaling modernization goals for hundreds of applications for his organization. And finally, Yogi is going to wrap the session with best practices and how you can use AWS services and capabilities to scale your modernization goal. Now let's start with the transformation challenges. But before I start talking about transformation challenges, I think it makes sense for me to define the term application modernization in the context of today's session. In the context of today's session, we'll be talking on taking your application and infrastructure to a higher value one. We'll be focusing on taking your legacy .NET framework application to a .NET core platform. And we'll be doubling down on 3 outcomes. Number 1, unlocking innovation potential for your application. Number 2, reduce take date of your application. And number 3, reduce total cost of ownership. Now come back to the challenges. The first is the speed. This process is slow. These legacy .NET framework applications running on Windows are often monolithic and complex in nature. And that makes the modernization process a challenging endeavor. The traditional labor-intensive works, but it takes years before you realize the true value of the cloud and unlock the innovation potential for your application. And its process is sequential. your entire team has to wait for all the steps to be completed before they can move to the next step. And that also creates collaboration challenges for a large organizations with a geographically distributed team. That also delays decision-making process as well. And the last thing is, these applications are built with old guard technologies. As we discussed before, organizations are seeing increased pressure to do more with less. So the customers are facing scaling challenges. They're looking for ways to accelerate their modernization journey. But what about the motivations? No one does modernization for the sake of doing modernization. I'm going to talk about two motivations. First, technology motivation. And the second, business motivations. So when it comes to technology motivation, the first thing is the performance. Performance is the key differentiator why developers should focus on upgrading their application to .NET Core platform. The garbage collection is way better. The just-in-time compiler is way superior. And according to the case study published by Microsoft, it can be 600 times faster than legacy .NET Framework 4.7. Second is the supportability and the security. They are way superior in the cross-platform world. The legacy .NET Framework, they're still supported, but the innovations and the development, they are far better in the cross-platform world. And the third, which is the biggest reason, is the cross-platform support. Your developer can start working on the Windows PC as well as they can use Mac OS. But not only that, you can take those applications and deploy them to a Linux container. And you can take your modernization journey further by deploying them to a Graviton instances to get a superior price point performance. And last but not the least, you get to access the large pool of developers. These new team members are getting onboarded to your team. It's very likely that they are familiar with the new technologies. So for all the technology managers, it is becoming risky to run these applications with the old guard technologies. Now let's look into the business motivation. Because you, as a technology partner, has to work hand in hand with your business partners to make this modernization goal a successful one. And for business team members, cost is always a conversation, right? So you can tell them, by modernizing this application, you can save up to 40% of total operating cost. You can not only eliminate the costly commercial licenses, but also you can leverage lightweight containers to reduce the storage as well as compute cost. You can also get the scale and the performance of the cloud. As your customer base is growing, as your organic revenue target is actually increasing, this application has to scale. And you can scale using lightweight containers. Or you can deploy them to a serverless architecture by leveraging AWS Lambda. So what about upgrading and porting process? So we started this journey a couple of years back with Thomson Reuters, with the tools and the capabilities that we had with us at that point of time. So the typical process looks like this. It always starts with the discovery, isn't it? So after the discovery is done, you start analyzing the code. And during the analysis process, you find out the compatibilities as well as the incompatibilities before you start porting the code. And then once the porting is done, you need to also validate the code. Like if you have an unit test cases, you also need to convert them to the .NET Core platform. If you do not have, then you need to write it from scratch. And then you eventually deploy your application. And if you find any post-deployment issue, you go back to the discovery and the analysis phase again. And this entire process is labor-intensive because it's a combination of a manual and a semi-automated work together. And because of that, it's error-prone as well. And for a company like Thomson Reuters, who has a geographically distributed team, they also are facing collaboration bottleneck. So they wanted a way to turbocharge their modernization project. And they also wanted to establish a synergy between the application team, which is their product engineering team, and platform engineering team, so that they can run this project together. To share their story, let me welcome Lalit, and he's going to share how he scaled modernization projects for hundreds of applications within his organization. Please welcome Lalit.
Thanks, Pradeep. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. My name is Lalit. I'm working with Platform Engineering Enablement Team as an AI Solutions Architect. In today's session, I'm going to share the story of how Thomson Reuters has leveraged agentic AI to transform the legacy .NET applications. At Thomson Reuters, we have made a bold commitment to become the world's leading content-driven AI technology company. This transformation is most visible in the tools we deliver to our customers, like CoCounsel, our agentic AI platform for tax, legal, compliance, and advisory professionals. Now, we are also transforming internally in how we build, modernize, and scale the very infrastructure that powers everything we do. Behind the scenes, we are evolving our engineering culture, accelerating the development cycles, and embedding AI into the way we work. And there's a reason for this, because to deliver professional-grade technology externally, we must operate like a modern tech company internally. And that's exactly what we are doing in platform engineering. Empowering development, enabling transformation. Now, one of our TR values is act fast, learn fast. A principle we put into practice when we partnered with AWS as early adopters during the beta phase. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share our transformation journey powered by agentic AI. At Thomson Reuters, we are working across decades of tech evolution: monoliths, microservices, .NET, Java, and more. All of it mission critical. Now, managing this environment takes time. And for every hour, our developers are applying patches, upgrading libraries, or managing the infrastructure. Now, that's the time we are not spending delivering new value to our customers. One of our major accomplishments is that recently we completed 95% of our migrations into the cloud. Now, this move gave us a cleaner and more agile foundation to innovate on. It actually gave our teams the ability to spend more time on AI capabilities. Now, however, we were still carrying around a lot of legacy .NET code, and that legacy was slowing us down. And it wasn't just old, it was competing with innovation. Our developers were stuck maintaining unfamiliar legacy frameworks that couldn't be replaced overnight. So we had to modernize, but we still had to remain fully operational, and that was the tension.
I see you said like you have 40% of your workload, which are .NET. Like how many lines of code you're talking about, how many applications you're talking about?
Yeah, so that brings me to this slide. So let's take a look at our .NET application landscape. So currently we are operating over 400 .NET applications that are running on Windows servers. And that results in substantial costs due to Windows licenses. Now, based on our 2024 cloud consumption report, we have estimated potential savings of millions of dollars by migrating from Windows to Linux, adopting Graviton servers, and containerization. Now, these applications, they are complex and they are mission critical, comprising over 500 million lines of code that keeps our developers engaged every hour. Now, let's take a look at an example of a highly complex web of dependencies between the various .NET components and the package dependencies. Now, on a lighter note, this looks like our walking path this week at Vegas, from our hotels to different venues. And this also reminds me of my morning path from all the way to Mandela Bay, from the opposite side of the strip. But trust me, this is just a small screenshot of one of our .NET applications package dependencies. Now, migrating a legacy .NET application from the legacy .NET framework to .NET Core is not just a version upgrade. It requires re-architecting the application to align with modern frameworks and the runtime constraints. And this image, this shows an intricate layer of interconnected dependencies, each with its own compatibility considerations. Now, this is another screenshot from another .NET application. You can see the dependency map between the various microservices and the package dependencies. Now, manually analyzing these dependencies is a very challenging task because these dependencies are deeply nested. Most of these legacy APIs are deprecated, or they just behave differently in .NET Core. So manually mapping these dependencies is labor-intensive, and it is prone to errors. So we started exploring AI technologies to address these challenges, and we ended up choosing AWS Transform for .NET. Now, you might be wondering, why AWS Transform for .NET? Because for us, it came down to three things: reliability, intelligence, and velocity. Now, as I mentioned about the beta phase, since that time, we have been we have progressed from transforming a single .NET solution in Visual Studio to now running transformations at scale using the web experience. Now, before AWS Transform, we explored various .NET porting tools, and it took us a lot of time and effort. Now, the project planning itself used to take a few months, and we faced various hurdles during the implementation. However, with AWS Transform, everything changed. Now, the screenshot that you see on the screen is a job plan from the web experience. The AI agent helps us create this job plan, the end-to-end job plan, along with all the background resources, using a simple chat experience. The unified web experience provides a centralized management, and it enables the cross-team collaboration. I can clearly define the roles and responsibilities of the team members who are working with me on the migration projects. I can assign them the appropriate roles, like approver, or admin, or collaborator, etc. And there's also a work log that provides a verbose log with a timestamp for future reference. And there is a nice dashboard which provides a complete transformation summary that includes important details like the lines of code, the number of projects, and the transformation status.
So I understand that you used AWS Transform to transform your code. But do you have any example that you can show, like how it looks like before and how it looks after the transformation?
Sure. So what you see on the screen right now is, let me show you a couple of scenarios. So this is scenario number one. So you see, like before the transformation, it's a legacy .NET code. It's a XML-based web.config file. And what we see here is in the code, we are configuring the authentication settings. For example, the 30 minutes timeout XML attribute. Now let's see what AWS Transform for .NET did. Now AWS Transform has identified the legacy pattern, and it has converted the XML-based web.config file into a code-based program.cs file. And you can also notice that the functionality remains same. You can see the same, the configuration and the timeout, session timeout settings, but it has explicitly configured the cookie security. Now let's look at another scenario. It's a similar XML-based web.config file. And here we are setting the target framework to the legacy 4.7.2. Now AWS Transform intelligently understood the legacy pattern, and here it did a little bit differently. What it did was it has split the code into two different files. Why? Because in the legacy pattern, we had everything in just one file called web.config, which is an XML-based file. But here you can see it has moved the configuration into an app settings.json file, and it has moved the logic into a separate file, which is a code-based program.cs file. So the functionality remains same, but it is now more modern and secure by default code. So we are modernizing for various reasons: speed, security, cost, But for me, most importantly, we are modernizing for customer impact. Now, we are running around 10 .NET modernizations in parallel, and these are like millions of lines of code, not just side projects, right? And AWS Transform, as a force multiplier, it is helping us to move safely into production without shutting down or starting over. Because company like ours, we don't get a greenfield reset. And these transformations, they don't run in isolation. Now, having said that, let's talk about some challenges. AI is not doing 100% job for us. There is still a lot to do, and that brings me to this slide about post-transformation challenges. Now, one of the biggest challenges that we face with running these transformations at scale is maintaining the compatibility of the C# code with the external or the third-party dependencies. Now, let me give you an example. A lot of components have been developed internally, which are not written in C#. For example, some of our graphical components, they are written in C++ code. There could be other scenarios like web forms or Windows forms. There could also be unsupported libraries like Windows Win32 DLLs or VB.NET. So this is why we need human in the loop to address these challenges. Now, as I said, being an early adopter, it gave us an opportunity to act fast and learn fast. And it also helped our consumers to do a better planning to transform their production workloads. Now, these transformations, trust me, they are never 100% success. A partially successful transformation could mean 50%, 70%, or maybe 90%. So this is exactly why we work very closely with the product engineering teams to ensure end-to-end successful transformation.
So I have a question, Lalit. So how did you bridge the gap?
Right. So whenever we complete a transformation and when we are ready to hand it over to the product engineering teams, basically AWS Transform commits the transform code into a new branch in the GitHub repository, and it creates a new PR. So what we do is we pull that transform code locally, and then on IDE, we use AI-assisted tool like Amazon Q Developer to transform the delta. So there's always a delta that's remaining because of the various factors I was just talking about, right? And the transformation log and the summary that I was talking about using the web experience, it acts as a guide for the next set of transformations, right? So once we address all these issues, then we are good to proceed with the next set of transformations and help our product engineering teams. And with that, I would like to welcome Yogi to take us through the deep dive.
Thanks, Lalit. Good morning, everyone. As Lalit showcased, modern applications with thousands of dependency makes it difficult to do a traditional manual transformation approach. Now with AWS Transform, we can use an AI-powered automation to address that complex dependency. So now I'm going to showcase how AWS Transform actually works, where is that magic coming, and what it is doing to help customers modernize this legacy application. Let's look at the benefits. So number one benefits is it helps accelerate transformation of .NET application by up to 4 times faster. Whether it's an analysis phase or dependency mapping, or you have to do compatibility assessment or refactoring the code, all of these times reduce as what Lalit showcased for Thomson Reuters use case from months of plannings to weeks of execution, right? So overall, you increase the speed of your migration. Next is in cost savings. Windows license, how many of you knows about Windows licensing cost? Right? It costs up to 40% more than the Linux server, as what Pradeep mentioned earlier. So not only licensing, with Windows it comes like maintenance, upgrades, end of support challenges. You can eliminate all of this. And on top of this, if you can also save the transformation cost, let me ask you this question, Lalit. How much did you pay for using AWS Transform?
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly, it's free of cost, right? So you save the cost required for all these modern transformation tools that you are using for planning, for resources, for analysis, and for remediating, for refactoring. All these things is handled using AWS Transform. And third thing is about quality. Because you can do manual transformation, but how do you ensure that your quality is as best, right? So we use a generative AI LLM. We have a .NET expertise deeply induced into this Amazon Bedrock large language models, LLMs, and that does this transformation. So because of that, you get the best quality of the ported code. At the same time, let me ask you these questions. How many of you have only one application in production? Only? We don't have only one application, right? We have hundreds of applications, and in Thomson Reuters use case, they had 400 such applications in production. So to modernize these hundreds of applications at scale, in parallel, that's another benefit of using AWS Transform. Now, let's deep dive into how it works. It comes with two experiences. One of them is web experience, and I'm looking at the time to see if I can talk about this. Okay, let me just wait for a couple of more minutes, and I will talk more about it. So with web experience, it's a React-based SPA frontend where you can port your repository, and then remind me again, what was your repository?
GitHub.
GitHub, yeah. So if you are using GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, or Azure DevOps, you can point your repository to web experience. And once you point your repository, you can select the projects within the repository. And once that's finalized, you can give an approval to AWS Transform to start working on the transformation. And it uses like 300 different customized parameters that you can do to customize your transformation. If you have your custom Nugget packages that you are using, you can even upload that and ask AWS Transform to use that. So it generates a real-time transformation summary on the dashboard. And one more important thing is if you have multiple projects, it uses a batch of 50 applications in a batch, and it does the transformation using that batch. Another thing is if you have multiple projects and multiple teams, so now I think I can, looking at the time, I think I can say great news we are releasing is we're going to have a multi-user collaboration, including your partners as well. So before, you can only have a workspace with the job that only one person works, or now you can have multiple teams, whether you are an IT administrator, whether you are a developer, or you are a DBA, or a program manager, you can now collaborate together on the same AWS Transform workspace. Not only that, if you are a partner working with a modernization with a customer, then you can also collaborate on the same workspace. That's all available from now 11 a.m. today. So that's another great, exciting features. It just got released. That's about web experience. Next is an IDE experience. How many of you are a developer? Lots of developers here, yeah? So except for me, I didn't start my career as a developer. But anyway, if you are a developer, you are used to with a Visual Studio IDE, right? So we give you the same experience using Visual Studio IDE so that you can open your solution file and port using AWS Transform to a newer version. What you can see here with the developer experience, there is a side-by-side comparison. So the intelligent code differential, it highlights the difference between the two versions, the one which is .NET Framework, another which is .NET Core. So now you can see that what's been changed, so you can easily understand the transformation. With IDE version, another thing is you can also generate the documentation. It's going to point to the .NET documentation as well, so that you can learn it as you are doing the transformation as well. Now, which experience is good, which one is bad? There is no good or bad experience. It depends on your personality. So you said you are a developer, so you must have started. Let me ask you this question. Which one you started for Thomson Reuters use case?
So we started with the IDE experience because we started small, and then we started scaling out using the web experience.
Nice. So if you are a developer, if you just want to do a POC for one application, you start with an IDE experience. Or if you are a DevOps personality, you can start with a web experience. I have seen customers started with a web experience, and then they want to do, sometimes, you know what, they don't even know how many applications are .NET Framework. Because you have hundreds of applications in a repository. If you want to just do a full scan of your repository, find out how many of them are .NET Framework application, what does the overall transformation summary looks like for all the projects. And you can create a business case, take it to your management and showcase that, hey, this is what we have. We got like so much of cost savings opportunity. Let's modernize them. So that will help you to make a decision and then take one application and go to the IDE version and try to port it, try to transform it using IDE. And if there is any failures, you can go back and forth as well. Now let's see how it works. So on the left here is your .NET application, framework application with a solution file with multiple projects, the traditional .NET web.config file, business logic, and unit test. When you fit that into AWS Transform, it goes into this tri-state loop. Analyze, transform, validate. Analyze, transform, validate. We call it as a tri-state loop because it has to do the porting until it finds the best fit. So it converts your .NET Framework applications, web.config to the program.cs. The business logic, it's been converted using thousands of predefined code conversion patterns that we have. It goes through that and it does the conversion. And in the validate phase, it does the validation as well. Your unit tests are executed. And one more thing is it's also check for the approval. There's always human in the loop because you want to make sure that before even you get started, you need a human to approve the repository. You need human to approve how many projects you are selecting, and you need approval to make sure your transformation is okay to deploy that. Now let's see the deep transformation stages. The first stage is a discovery stage. This is where AWS Transforms determines the number of lines of code, what type of application it is. Is it a Windows form application, web form application, WPF application, MVC application? What it is in my portfolio. It identifies the number of lines of code as well as what's required for doing an overall assessment. The next phase is an analysis phase. This is where the dependency mapping happens. It's whether it's an internal dependency or an external dependency. So your solution can depend on multiple projects in within, or you can have one solution file depends on other solution in folder, or you can even have external dependency with another repository. Everything is identified at this stage. How many of you are familiar with Nugget packages, right? AWS Transform supports 250 Nugget packages, right? So it does that third-party library assessment, identify the DLLs, identify the APIs calls, and do all analysis and generates and detailed assessment report end of this stage. And the next stage is a planning phase. So this stage, it does creates an actual transformation strategy creation. What's the timeline required? How many resources are required? You know, taking the actual PM's job is done in this planning phase by AWS Transform. And at the end, you get an AWS Transform to do an administrator approval. Last phase, the fourth phase is an execution phase. So with this phase, actual magic happens. Actual work happens in this phase. This is where the automatic code conversation happens. We have like pre-trained thousands of different .NET transformation code patterns. It goes through them until it finds the best solution. And at the same time, if you have any unit test supplied with your project, it does the execution of that unit test as well. And then lastly, the validation phase. How many of you have a performance problem in your .NET application? Legacy framework application has a performance problem, right? So you want to make sure the ported code also meets the performance requirement. At least it's same or better, right? So with performance matrix evaluation before and after, it makes sure that it does an proper checking before you do the transformation. Then it creates the transformation assessment summary report. And lastly, it creates the Linux readiness report. Now, let me ask you this question, Lalit. What is your end state goal for deploying this application which you modernized?
Yeah, so we definitely want to run these on Linux containers.
Linux containers, right? So, but then how do you know if your application is Linux ready, right? So AWS Transformation will give you a Linux readiness report. So it makes sure that your ported code is now ready to run on Linux. And if it's missing any gaps, it's going to list out, and it's going to give you remediation steps as well, what you can do to remediate those issues. So that's all about the transformation. Now, let's talk about security of this service. Security is job zero at AWS. A lot of customers ask me, I'm from Canada, so when AWS Transform first started, it was only available in US East and Frankfurt region, right? So customer asked me, hey, Yogi, when it is coming in Canada Central? Like, I really want to use, because some government standard, they don't want to send your code outside your region. And I'm happy to announce that today, as of now, we started supporting to 6 more regions. AWS Transform for .NET is going to be available in 6 more regions, including Canada Central as well. So all my Canadian customers can take an advantage right now. Now, let's look at the security point of view. How does this service works, right? So when a user sends an authenticated users, again, this has to be an identity manager. I am authenticated user only. When it goes request to then AWS Transform, it goes through an API gateway. And this first request itself is TLS 1.3 encrypted. So this connection is encrypted. Then it goes to the API gateway. This is where AWS Web Application Firewall handles the rate limit and request filtering. At the same time, now when it goes further, it uses an temporary processing for doing all this transformation. So if you are using an IDE experience, it does the work locally on your environment. And if you are using a web experience, what it does, it creates a temporary EC2 instance into your into the VPC, and this has been destroyed after the transformation is done. So it's all data is being purged, and we don't keep this data in forever. It's like a temporary processing. And during this all, if you need to put a temporary storage, it uses an Amazon S3 for storage, and that is being encrypted with AWS Key Management Service, AWS KMS. And now, if you said, hey, I want to do my custom keys, can you do that? Yes, you can also do a custom key encryption on top of AWS Key Management Service as well. Another thing is authentication. Another great exciting news. Until now, it was only supporting an IAM authentication in Identity Center. But as of today, now AWS Transform supports Okta as well as Microsoft Entra ID as an authentication method. So now you can also have a broader collaboration between different authentication IDP provider to use AWS Transform. Next is an AWS CloudTrail, where all the API and audit things are getting logged. And we also have Amazon CloudWatch that you can have your detailed monitoring. Now, how many of you have tried AWS Transform before? Because it released in May, in May of this year. Yeah. So when you tried this, it did not allow you to continue from the failed job, right? You have to redo the stuff. But again, another good news today, from now on, you can restart your failed job. You can continue from where it landed. You can collaborate with multiple teams. You can collaborate with multiple roles. And you can have like administrator, contributor, read-only, this kind of different roles within AWS Transform. And it stores everything into AWS CloudWatch, which you have access. Before, it was still storing, but you did not have access. But now we make it more transparent. We listen to your request, we listen to customer requirement, and make it available for you so you can understand what actually it's doing. So CloudWatch monitoring will be there for you as well. Now, every customer I talk about AWS Transform, they ask me this question. Tell me, Yogi, if my application is an Windows web forms, is it supported? If my application is an MVC application, my application is WCF application, is it supported? What's supported, what's not supported, right? So you can see here the source .NET version supported. If you have .NET Framework 3.5 and up, .NET Core 3.1, .NET Standard 2, just now, we started supporting that at 11 a.m. as well. The .NET Standard 2 is also now supported if you have that. And what is the destination is in .NET 8. So probably, Lalit, your destination is also .NET 8, right now?
Currently, yes.
But we are happy to announce today that if you are looking forward, we can also port your application on .NET 10 now, because that's the newest long-term supportability version Microsoft released earlier this month. And we are now supporting that as a destination as well. So .NET 10 is also supported. So, and one of the things you mentioned in your presentation as a post-transformation limitation that you had in web forms, right? So those web forms, now we can have that converted into Blazor as well. So you can also maybe plan that for your future project to convert those ASP.NET web forms into ASP.NET Core Blazor as well. If you have MVC Razor, ASP.NET pages, that can be also converted into ASP.NET Core. And here comes the excitement, actually. Before I click on next slide, I just want to make sure I got the permission from my, good, all right. So tell me about what database you are using, Lalit, for your .NET application.
Mostly SQL Server.
SQL Server? OK. So we are happy to announce today that we will be starting the Windows full stack modernization, which includes your .NET as well as SQL Server database. So now, if your application has a SQL and .NET together, your SQL will be modernized to Amazon Aurora for PostgreSQL. So AWS Transform will help you do a Windows full stack end-to-end modernization. And this is a big news for me because I've been DBA in my whole life, and I know how difficult it is to convert from SQL Server to Aurora PostgreSQL because both of them are different engine. The schema conversion itself is challenging. T-SQL to PLPG SQL conversion, transaction semantics are different. Even the optimizer, query tuning, everything works differently. Indexes are also working differently, as well as the security. And trust me, AWS Transform for Windows full stack modernization handles everything in the back end. So it removes all manual intervention, and it does the schema conversion to Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL. Now you may ask, how about my data? So you can also convert your data to Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL. So as first step, it converts the schema. Second step, it does the data migration. And you will ask me a question, hey, Yogi, how about my application? It also modernizes the application, which has a SQL Server code written within the application. It converts that as an Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL code. So it's a full stack end-to-end modernization, and we are so proud to announce today that it's going to be available for all of you to start using in all the total 8 regions that we are supporting AWS Transform. So that's a big news. You can hear more in the keynote tomorrow about that, more details as well. And if you want to learn more about it, we have a lot of sessions. Embargo sessions will be available for you in your catalog as well. Check out the reInvent catalog for this topic, and you can mark that in your calendar as well. There are more resources to learn more about it. But before I go that stage, I would like to ask Lalit to say, can you tell about what's an overall outcome of your modernization?
Sure, happy to talk about it. So we have come down from running transformations for a few months to just a few sprints. Currently, we are modernizing over 1.5 million lines of code per month. And this is possible because we are working closely in synergy with the product engineering teams. And all the initial POCs that we did, it helped a lot to do a proper planning and ensure our consumers to do a complete end-to-end transformation using AWS Transform for .NET. So one important thing I would like to say here is that it gives our developers the time to build the future and not maintain the past.
That's exactly what you said. And since, as I understand, you are still transforming, right?
We are, yeah, and it's just the beginning.
It's something is still running for in the Thomson Reuters workspace right now. They are still transforming the code. So they have started. Now it's about your turn. Like what the message that I would like to give is free of cost. So identify your sample application. And I want you to understand and experience yourself. Try it out firsthand for your sample application and see how it looks for you. If you do more help, do a POC, reach out to your account team, and then maybe reach out to us, and we can help you do the POC. And find out the cost savings you can get. Do an estimation, and then present a business case to your management to see how much it can help you save cost. And lastly, AWS Transform will help your modernization to take to the next level, right? So instead of running it a slow, steady, and manual modernization, now you can have a fast, AI-based, and parallel modernization for your application. We have created a case study working with Thomson Reuters. So here is an QR code to link to that case study. There are more resources for AWS Transform. And we have more sessions, hands-on workshop. So please check out this QR code because this has the workshop for this new Windows full stack modernization. If you want to see how it is, like builder session, workshop, and there are also workshops on using AWS Transform for .NET as well. So check out all the resources that you have available. And you know what? Looking at the time, I'm going to now ask Lalit a question before I hand it over to you guys for question answer. Can you tell me a best tips that you have it for this audience?
Well, I can think a couple of them right now. I think the first one would be start small, and then you can scale out using the web experience. So you don't have to worry about even if you want to start with a POC. And most importantly, be ready to face some challenges. There will be failures, for sure, because as I said, these transformations, these are never 100% success. So you can use AI-assisted tools to transform the delta, and there's always human in the loop. So that's what I can.
Thank you very much for sharing those tips. And we are here. So if you have any questions, we can ask. We purposely kept this some time for question answers because we know that you might have a lot of questions about how about ADO.NET support. It's supported right now. How about entity framework support? It is supported from entity framework to entity framework core. How about VB.NET? That's coming up, right? So any other questions that you might have we are here to help. So having said that, we're going to wrap up this session. Thank you, everyone, for joining. You can ask any question that you have for us. We will be here to answer the questions. And please don't forget to fill out the session survey. It's very important for us to get the survey results. Thank you.